Hello everyone and welcome to Daily Signal's Live Top 10, where we bring you the top stories of the week, many of which have gone underreported in the mainstream media. Now here joining me to do all of that are my colleagues at the Daily Signal. First of all, our social media manager, Lindsay Fifield, and our commentary editor, Daniel Davis. So we're going to start, guys, with Hurricane Harvey, which has been a top story everywhere this week, and we're going to hit different angles of it. But first we want to start with the really positive notes of how this has shown the best of both Texas and America.
Saving Old Glory.
Rescue!
There's a truck driver stuck here in about 10 feet of water. I'm going to try to get his attention. There is now water filling his cab. Here they come. I am terrified for him, so I can't imagine. And here he comes. I feel like I can finally breathe.
I just thank God that you guys was right here to get me, put me back on land safe. I just appreciate you.
Doing a lemonade and sweet tea stand.
For what?
Texas.
No, you can take it all. Don't, no change.
And his mission to help has others going out of their way to step up too.
Thank you, ma'am.
To see these young men take his love of wanting to help somebody to this magnitude, that's amazing. That fills you with hope.
So many inspiring stories that we've been able to see this week. Daniel, what's your take on this?
It really is heartwarming to see these citizens banding together and helping each other, especially in this political turmoil that we're in, this season of toxic politics. It's so good to see ordinary Americans, people who don't normally dominate the headlines, actually on screen and doing ordinary.
Definitely. I mean, exactly what things go wrong, when things go bad, we band together, we love each other, we lift each other up. And I think that's why these stories are so heartwarming, but also this is exactly what we should expect. This is what we see every time there's a natural disaster. Americans step up and help each other.
And I will say, I mean, as a native Texan myself, I've been so proud of Texas, but I would, as I said in a commentary earlier this week, I think this is what many of you out there would do as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
Regardless of what state you're in, I think your average American citizen would go help their neighbor, strangers across the street or down the street that they don't know, if this is what's happening. Well, somebody who has actually come in under a lot of criticism, though, for maybe not acting soon enough, is Joel Osteen, who's a pastor at one of the largest churches in America, Lakewood. I think it's Lakewood Church in Houston. Let's take a look at why it's coming under criticism, and then we'll get some reactions to whether it's actually fair. Take a look.
Give you an idea of some of the freeways and what's going on right out in front of here on these stairs, which are an easy and elevated building. And as I turn around, I show you the Joel Osteen church here. But do those look like they're flooded? And yes, people can get here. People can get here, and surrounding this area, there's been devastation enough. This is not flooded, folks. This is called, I don't want to be inconvenienced.
During the period of time that people are being critical of us, the church was inaccessible. I mean, the feeder roads around the church were absolutely inundated with water. My daughter got caught on an overpass on Saturday night, and we almost had to walk 3 miles just to come get her.
We're all about helping people. This is what the church is, and our church is all about. So I think I don't know if it's unfounded, but I think if people were here, they'd realize there were safety issues. This building had flooded before, and so we were just being precautious. But the main thing is the city didn't ask us to become a shelter then.
So what is the truth here? Lindsay, both sides of the story, what do you think happened?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, I'm not the biggest Joel Osteen fan, but that doesn't matter. I think that people kind of, the social media pile-on that happens in the wake of any little mistake just gets magnified, especially in the eye of something this big. And so I think people just latched onto the story, the left-wing media, as well as, a lot of conservatives criticized him as well. It wasn't just the left-wing media. A lot of people kind of piled on and used it as an excuse to talk about how people should be doing more. But we'll never really know. I mean, was the church flooded? He says so. You know, there's two sides of the story. I think he did as much as he could, and also it's a liability for a lot of these churches. If the church was taking on water, it would have been a liability for them to open it up as a shelter.
Right. I mean, and Daniel, I just have a hard time believing that Joel Osteen and the church there doesn't want to help the people of Houston. It just seems completely so out of character.
Yeah. Right, absolutely. And myself, also not the biggest Joel Osteen fan, but that's really irrelevant here. I mean,
exactly.
The facts are what matter. And actually, there was a lot. There's some sort of reporting going on. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that we didn't know about. You know, Joel Osteen and his church were in dialogue with the city officials. There was a much larger convention center that was being used as the main staging point for people being evacuated, and so Osteen's church was going to act as a food distribution center, and then overflow once the other convention center filled up, which hadn't filled up yet. And they actually weren't turning people away; people just hadn't come to them yet. So now we do know that they are taking in people now, but you know, it's really the facts have to lead on this.
Yeah. Well, talk about some other interesting facts. Let's get to another personality who's now come under attack here, and that's Linda Sarsour, who many of you probably know her. She's a liberal activist. She took advantage of what was Hurricane Harvey and people wanting to help and gave a link for people to give. But the link she gave, well, take a look. I'm sorry, we don't have that clip.
Oh, there's not a clip?
There's
not
a
a
clip.
Oh, that's right, because there's no video. It's just a link. No clip.
Okay,
we
so
should have been reading our notes.
Let me give more background on this. So she basically, Lindsay, as you know, put together a link saying, give to this organization.
Yes.
But talk about who this organization is.
So this is a political action group, and it's a 501c3. I've worked in these before. It is, you know, you shouldn't be directing funds to these, and you especially legally can't tweet out that this is a relief fund or some kind of, they're not donating food or baby formula. There's no humanitarian stuff. This is for legal advocacy. All of the donations are actually going to groups like the SEIU. It has it right there on the website. So once you click through to the link, you do see that you're giving to a political action group. But the way that she said it in the tweet was that, oh, this is, you know, give to the relief effort, and it's not.
Yeah, the clickbait was, this will help Hurricane Harvey
and
victims.
It won't.
And what it also means, even the legal advocacy she's talking about would only help certain Hurricane Harvey victims, right?
Because it's so divisive and it's so ridiculous, but I think the most egregious part of it coming out of it was that, you know, conservatives were the first ones, we were the first ones to tweet about it and say, hey, this is wrong. And the media then, of course, the headlines turned into, oh, conservatives claim Linda Sarsour did this. We're not claiming anything. She actually did it. We literally have screenshots that she was directing people to donate to a political action group in the wake of a tragedy.
Okay, let's bring up another controversial piece that came out of all this, and this is Politico, which is a publication here in Washington, but it's a court that covers national issues, but primarily the Hill. But it put up this cartoon that many people have found very offensive. Daniel, your take on this?
Yeah, the cartoon was absolutely, it was a caricature of what the artist had in his mind of what the hurricane victims were like. It was awful. If you see it online, it's basically saying that these people believe in small government, and yet they're, you know, welcoming the National Guard to come help them. It basically is saying, if you're a conservative, you believe in limited government, then you don't believe in getting help from the government ever, which is basically equating conservatism with anarchism, saying that there should be no government, and that's false. There's been a lot of backlash from across the spectrum. There was one Washington Post report that really dissected it and sort of rebuked it. I think rightfully so. Politico took it down from their Twitter feed. But it's just tone deaf. It's tone deaf, and it really showed a kind of antipathy toward these people.
Right. Well, and Lindsay, I mean, what I think came out here to a great extent was the fact that not only the person who drew this, but the editors at Politico thought this was fine. I mean, you know, Lindsay gets to put up all the cartoons and the like that we do here, and when you have questions about them, you will say to me or others, "Hey, do we think this is really the right message?" Right. So the fact that so many people over there thought this is fine, and this is what we apparently think of the people who live in this part of the country. It shows a lot about probably all the other coverage they do.
I mean, this is not the first time that this cartoonist has been in this kind of trouble before. He's a very controversial, intentionally so, and that's the point of political cartoons. Political cartoons are meant to evoke a reaction, but not in the wake of a tragedy and not in this way, because I think it just revealed such contempt and such hate for the people in Texas. I mean, it was really a hateful statement that he was making. And then when he backpedaled and said, oh, I was trying to be pro-Coast Guard and pro-government, I mean, first of all, this is a group effort. This is government and community coming together. You know, we saw the Cajun Navy rescuing members of the National Guard who got into a little bit of hot water, I mean, with their boats. And so this is a group effort. Americans are coming together. The government is helping, but they're also, you know, the community is helping as well. So I think the whole point of the cartoon was just wrong.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, I mean, it shows that people, Daniel, as you were pointing out, just because somebody's for limited government doesn't mean that they're anti-government. Right. There is a role for government. It's just not every part of our lives.
Right.
But, you know, many conservatives believe, yes, we do need limited government, but we also need government to do the things it should be doing, like security, national security, military, things like what we're seeing with Hurricane Harvey. But that doesn't mean that they're anti-government. All right, let's move on, shall we? Let's go to, so this has been dominating the headlines, of course, was the Hurricane Harvey coverage. But President Trump also made a trip to Missouri to unveil his principles on tax reform, because Congress is getting ready to come back this next week, and they'll be hopefully picking up this issue. Let's take a look at what President Trump had to say.
I am fully committed to working with Congress to get this job done, and I don't want to be disappointed by Congress. Do you understand me? Do you understand? Understand.
So, will the president, will the rest of America be disappointed by Congress? Daniel, let me ask you, what's going to happen?
I think that's the right question. It's will Congress get the job done? And clearly they did not get the job done in health care, but this is really the big ticket item left in this Congress. Can we get tax reform done? And there are different levels, different degrees of tax reform. You know, at Heritage, we believe that, and at Senate leadership also believes that we got to go big. We need to simplify the tax code, get the loopholes out, lower rates for individuals, for corporations, and to get wage growth happening in the country. So this is a big thing for Trump, and my thought is that Republicans will be more unified on this issue, because it's not as divisive as health care, and it's just critical for getting economic growth happening.
But it's going to be so important that they talk about it the right way. And I thought the president did a great job yesterday talking about this is about companies and workers. Because, you know, even when we're talking about giving tax cuts to corporations, what that means is more jobs, higher wages for the people that work for those companies, better pricing on many of the goods that they produce, bringing more back here. He talked about it like that. I mean, the other side is going to try to paint this as like tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for business. I mean, Lindsay, Daniel's right. This is probably the biggest ticket item that Congress is going to take up. What's your prediction on whether they'll get it done?
I hope they get it done. They better get it done. I think that if they keep it simple and they focus on, you know, how to sell this to the American people and explain it, I think that's the reason things fell apart with healthcare, is people didn't really understand it. And I think as long as they really understand this is pro-growth, this is about raising wages and getting better jobs, keep it simple, it'll pass.
All right, let's move on to more of a culture segment here. And by that, I mean the movies. And what movies apparently no longer are acceptable in some movie theaters in this country. Apparently, there's a movie theater saying Gone with the Wind is no longer going to be played at their theater. Take a look.
Has the war started?
Sir, you should have made your presence known.
In the middle of that beautiful love scene? That wouldn't have been very tactful, would it?
So that was a clip from the, 1939 film, Gone with the Wind. Lindsay, are you sad?
I am sad. I mean, I'm really hoping, like, Turner Classic Movies, please stay strong and don't go anywhere and don't censor what you play, because I love being able to watch older movies and older films. I think this is ridiculous. I mean, this is a classic film. There was nothing, you know, yes, it's controversial in some ways when you look through it with the proper lens of history, but that doesn't mean we should just not play it at all. It means that we should, you know, respect that, watch it with that, you know, mind to maybe this wouldn't be appropriate today for us to have, you know, but this was the first African-American to win an Oscar came out of this movie. And now what a ding on her legacy to say, nope, you're not allowed to see this movie anymore. You're too dumb to understand what, you know, what this is all about.
It was portraying a certain time in American history.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that culture did exist.
Yes.
It's like to pretend that we're just, we're just going to wipe away any part of history because we don't like some parts of it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. I mean, should we stop playing any movies about other controversial parts of history?
Right.
Daniel, what do you think on this?
I think it's the same as Lindsay. I mean, it's a classic movie. It's actually, if you're going to study film, the history of film in America, this is a milestone. I mean, you have to know about Gone with the Wind. And it actually reflects on the way we remember the Civil War in that era. And so just as an educational tool, I think it's critical that we not black this out and forget about it.
Yeah, and I think as President Trump said when at another recent controversy is, where does it end? I think that's another big question. Is okay, it's Gone with the Wind today. This is just one more step, but where does it end? At a certain point, we're not going to be able to watch any films from the past because it might have something controversial.
Apparently, if you go to school at a certain private school in Maryland, you're no longer going to be able to wear anything to school that has the Washington Redskins logo on it, even though being in the Maryland area, you might be a Washington Redskins fan. So this is a school. It's a private school. It's pretty exclusive. I mean, to go to kindergarten there, it's about $25,000, $26,000 a year. I looked on their website.
Yeah.
$36,000 or $37,000 once you get into higher grades. But that's fine.
Yeah.
But they put out a thing, Daniel, saying no Redskins memorabilia or anything on your person. You can wear other teams. They're not banning other football teams, but just the Redskins.
Yeah, it's a lot of money to pay for having to endure that kind of political correctness. I'd say, as a Cowboys fan, it's like, it's the Redskins. It's a private school. They can do what they want again with their money, and that they choose to go there. If this were happening in a public school, it'd be a very different story. That'd be awful.
Totally.
But still, the political correctness is just irritating to me.
Right. Well, and it's also just so silly. I mean, you're right. They can do what they want to do. But Lindsay, I mean, and I've written on this before because I'm a Cowboys fan too. So I'm very interested in what they call them over there in Washington. But what kills me about this, I mean, even the Washington Post put out a poll like a year ago. 9 out of 10 Native Americans don't find it offensive at all.
Yeah.
It's they don't. I mean, whether it's the Washington Redskins, other high schools that have that name, whatever, they don't look at it as offensive at all. So why does this, frankly, mostly white private school get so outraged?
I don't understand. And I think if they wanted to be fair about it, why not just ban all sports teams? Like say, okay, you can't wear any gear that celebrates your sports teams, just to be fair to people who might be wearing their opponent's gear or something. I don't know. I just think that it's bizarre to fixate on something like this. And like you said, it's not really they keep trying to make it a controversy here in D.C. They're always trying to make it a controversy. It's just not one.
Right. No, exactly right. All right. Well, here's another controversy, though, that is a true controversy. And this is where we have a teacher who's now saying you can't mention or say the word God in class. Take a look.
If convicted, winner faces up to 10 years in prison. Parents outraged after their first graders are told to keep God out of their classroom. A teacher in Indiana asking children not to use the words God, Jesus, and the devil, saying, quote, "I do not want to upset a child or parent because of these words being used." But after the backlash, the superintendent responded by saying, trying to limit a student's view on religion is a violation of a student's First Amendment rights.
So there you have it. Daniel.
It's censorship.
There's Tell us how you really feel.
What does it say to a student when a teacher says you can't use the word God in class? To me, it's basically saying this school is atheistic and you can have your private beliefs, but you can't talk about them and they can't matter in classroom. It's basically
so the First Amendment doesn't exist in this classroom,
right? Basically. In a public classroom, basically. Even if it were a private school, I don't know if it'd be different. It's such a. I mean, you wouldn't know based on this that we used to have school prayer in this country, and now you can't even use the word God. So that's a problem. But kudos on the superintendent who released a statement to the parents saying this was wrong, and the student does have First Amendment rights.
Oh, good.
So it was a happy ending on this one.
That is a good ending.
And I think a happy ending on this next story coming out of Tampa. We're going to go kind of back to Hurricane Harvey here. So you had a professor at a university in Tampa saying basically that the residents of Texas actually deserved what happened to them. Take a look.
This university has a great reputation in the community, and he is not doing that reputation any justice whatsoever.
You lead on this one.
So the controversy has continued on. My understanding is the professor has been asked to leave.
Good. All right.
Yeah, very good
That's
stuff.
a good
right?
outcome.
But again, it kind of goes back to the Politico thing, and this is also somewhat.
It's outrageous.
It shouldn't paint all of academia,
Right.
but this wasn't
Right.
the only professor.
No.
Dartmouth had another situation
Right.
where other places this happened.
Well, it's so funny. This is so deeply and richly ironic because I know in years past there have been like preachers who have come out and said that like, oh, this natural disaster was the result of this is God's wrath or something like that. Now the left is doing it, and then they're doing it with climate
And what's
change or
amazing
whatever
is
they
for
want to
those
say.
that don't oftentimes believe in God.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
Which is why he
So
had to use the word karma. Yeah.
Right. We see you. We know what you're doing. I think it does just reveal such a contempt and hate for people that aren't like them or don't agree with them.
Right.
It's outrageous. Like, how much do you have to hate this administration to say that a flood that has killed tons of people and homes have been lost had anything to do with an administration because you just don't like their policies? Like, that's cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
We're going to let that be the final. We're going to let that be the final say from us. But we are going to leave you with a statement from President Trump, who was speaking down in Texas. I believe this was outside at Corpus Christi, where he talked about the fact that Texas can handle anything. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend and be encouraged. Thanks.
This has been a total cooperative effort. Again, we will see you soon. I will tell you, this is historic. It's epic what happened. But you know what? It happened in Texas, and Texas can handle anything. Thank you all, folks. Thank you. Thank you.